Hello, my name is Melissa, and I'm here to tell you today about my traumatic brain injury and how it ended up being the very best thing that could have ever happened to me. I know that sounds crazy. It almost feels crazy saying it, but honestly, it's true. So in 2018, I was ziplining with my family, and I fell 25 feet from a ziplining platform. They didn't use static lines if you had more than 10 people in your party, which we did, so that's how it happened. I broke my fall with my right arm, wrist, had surgery there to repair that. Thank you. I feel like it really did save my life. I laid on the ground for 39 minutes before first responders showed up. Then I was airlifted to a hospital in Springfield, Missouri. I spent a few days in the ICU and then about a week in the hospital, and then I went home too early. I should have stayed and done more physical therapy, but at the time my kids were 9 and 12 and I needed to get home to them. At least I thought I needed to get home to them, and I wanted to be with them. So, but I thought I would go over some of the symptoms that I've dealt with and some of the things that I've done to help with those symptoms. And then at some point I'll break this all down into separate videos. The one to watch is me going back to work. That one's going to be a good one. All right. So when it comes to the symptoms, when I left the hospital, my discharge paperwork mentioned nothing about a brain injury, nothing about post-concussion syndrome. There was zero about my brain on there. So as far as I knew, everything was fine. I get home, I'm recovering, I'm in a cervical brace for 6 weeks, can't drive. And then when I am finally able to drive, I notice a few things. I notice that my fuse is much shorter and that I can't stand for long periods of time. If I stand somewhere in the grocery store, I get agitated very easily. And so I would walk away from my cart and just leave. So fatigue, extreme fatigue has been number one when it comes to these symptoms, the hardest thing to get over. The next thing I noticed was lack of vocabulary. Also, losing my train of thought mid sentence, which is super embarrassing. And I couldn't pick it back up. I would just be talking and then absolutely have no idea what I was saying. It was kind of scary, to be honest. Loud noises. So, my daughter was in cheer. And so I would go to these cheer competitions and they would have music thump, 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 thumping. I mean, rocking, man. And then all these girls are screaming. I remember just being so overwhelmed by the time I would leave those places. I would be so exhausted. Oh, it was hard. Baseball wasn't much easier. It was a little bit easier. I was super happy to be outside with baseball, but the fencing was the first challenge. You know how it's crisscross, and so you're looking through the fencing, and a lot of times some of these places would have net as well as fence. So you're looking through two different layers of things to try to watch your kids play ball, and it messed with my brain and my eyes. Cheering and yelling, I wanted to clap and cheer, and I did for my son. I really didn't do it for the rest of the team because even when I was doing it for my son, sometimes it made my head hurt, sometimes it made me nauseous, sometimes it made me dizzy. Someone had a cowbell, and when they would ring that, I did not like it. It was just everything that was stimulating, especially to my ears, ended up making me feel very tired, very fatigued. Temperature regulation was another one that hit me hard in baseball. It could be the most beautiful day out, sun shining, tank top on, shorts, feeling good, hot. You get to the game, you sit down, still sunny, still looking good, but the wind's blowing, 25 miles an hour, maybe even just 15 miles an hour. All of a sudden, it's not so warm anymore. So, and I would get really grumpy if I got cold. So I had to make sure that I had, plenty of layers with me to combat that. And then lack of facial recognition. This was a big one. It prevented me from talking to a lot of people at games. Not just the lack of facial recognition, but that combined with the losing my train of thought and my vocabulary not being there made me not want to talk to anybody. But sometimes I would see someone, I would have a conversation with them, and then a week later I would see them again, have no recollection of having ever met them, unless something in the conversation sparked a memory of the former conversation. But when it came to the just looking at their face, mm-mm. And I'm still working on that one. That one's still a struggle for me. I just ran into a lady at a pop-up boutique a few weeks ago, and she said, "Hey," and I didn't know who she was, and then she said, "Oh, and this is my daughter," and she introduced me to her daughter, who I told you about. We had had a long conversation about her daughter at Bunko, and I didn't even remember this woman from Bunko. I didn't remember this conversation until she mentioned it, and then of course the subject was very dear to me, so I remember. Oh, so good to meet you. Oh, so good to see you again. I still right now can't think of her name, even though I know on the way home from Bunko that night I repeated it to myself over and over and over and over and over and over and over again as to not forget it. Not just her name, there were a few other people whose names I didn't want to forget either. But now I can only remember maybe two of those. So that one I'm still working on. That one's really hard for me to, I don't know, that one's difficult. And the self isolation that came along with that, I think I've already gone over that. Emotional regulation, wow. I had no idea that this was going to be such a problem. I still struggle with this. It's gotten a lot better in the last year and a half, but especially when I first went back to work, that one that one was really hard because yeah, that one's just really hard. Also, another thing that surprised me, I tried giving blood maybe a year after my accident, and that put me in bed for 3 days. My body did not like that, could not handle that. It was too much. It was too much for my body to try to reproduce that blood that was taken. I did try to give blood again about a year later. I'm O negative, so they're always sending me messages, please donate, because my blood can go to anyone. And same thing. I was in bed for 3 days, so no more blood donations from me, at least for a while. Then there was the extreme depression. This one was very hard to work through too. I have CPTSD from my childhood. There was physical, mental, and emotional abuse. My brother and I suffered this every day via our dad. Our mom was not able to be a loving, kind, safe spot either. So that was very difficult. Also, my brother and I were molested by our next door neighbor. For me, it was between the ages of 4 and 7. And that man is currently in prison for molesting his grandchildren. So I had gone through years of therapy in my 30s to overcome all of these traumatic events from my childhood. And I had gotten to a really good place. But after the accident and this brain injury, it all came back, especially after the second brain injury. So, because of the vestibular issues that I struggled with from my brain injury, in my bathroom one morning, I passed out. And when I passed out, I fell and I hit my head. Now, that I lost consciousness for a little bit. Went for my big fall, 25 feet, never lost consciousness, awake the whole time. This little one lost consciousness. And then when I came to, I was out of it. I thought I was urinating and defecating, but I wasn't. It was just very odd. But after that, all of the CPTSD came back, even so far as to when I would look in the mirror, I would see my mom. I would see, and it looked like I was my mom, and it just made me sick. I could not take it. I did not want to be anything like her. It would make me cry. It would make me disgusted. It was awful. So I started thinking about suicide a lot, a lot. Why am I here? My parents don't even love me. How, just a very victim mentality. I just kept thinking about how I wasn't loved, how I wasn't cared for, um, how I didn't want to be like my mom, didn't want to be like anybody in my family. My older brother took his own life at 32. So he's gone. He's not here to talk to. Anyway, so some of the things that help me, these are the things that I'll be talking about in my future videos, and I'll go into detail about all of them. CBD with BCP. CBD, we all have an endocannabinoid system. That's one of the best things that happened with this. I was able to learn about that. I've gone to a lot of conferences, just done a lot of research, learned a lot. So CBD, I think everyone should be taking it. I do still take it daily. It's wonderful. Prism lenses were something that helped me with the fatigue quite a bit. I was lucky enough to go to a doctor who was able to recognize this, got me set up with the Prism lenses. They're super expensive, but man, were they worth every single penny. Therapy, I went to vestibular therapy, vision therapy, occupational therapy. I didn't do any more like emotional therapy because I had so many other things I was working on. I did join a post concussion syndrome / TBI support group that met in person in Overland Park once a month. That was extremely beneficial to me. just being around other people who understood. That's really one of the biggest things is having people that understand. One of my best friends at the beginning of this, her son had a traumatic brain injury. And then she introduced me to a woman who also had a traumatic brain injury. And those were the only two people I really felt comfortable talking to, because if I did lose my train of thought, they understood. They didn't judge me for it. They totally understood. So if anyone out there just needs some support, I do that now. I help support people who need support. If it's just talking that you want, if you want some advice, if you just need someone to listen to you, I'm here. I'm here for you. Reach out, send me a message. Um, yeah, reach out to me. I would love to help you. And that friendship and support, there's nothing like it. It really got me through a lot of hard times. Some of the other things that I did microdose mushrooms because it helps build new neural pathways, which was very important to me. Not only did I need to heal my brain, but I felt like I needed to heal it in a different way without all of this trauma. I needed to rebuild things so that this trauma wasn't so present in my life. I did a ketamine assisted psychotherapy, a couple of those big sessions where you take ketamine and you have a psychotherapist there so you're able to talk as you're going through the experience. And then at a conference, I met a man who had a traumatic brain injury himself, had just gotten back from a center that helped with like hyperbaric chamber, oxygenation therapy, sound therapy, meditation, eating clean foods that, you know, help fight inflammation. He also had to try to rid his body of metals and toxins. But anyway, he introduced me to the to the medicine 5-MeO DMT. I'd never heard of it, didn't understand it, but from what I had told him about my PTSD, he thought this was the way to go. So within a week of meeting this man, I was going through a 5-MeO DMT ceremony, and it was one of the best things I've ever done in my whole life. I'll do a whole video on it, but I tell you, it gave me so much hope because, first of all, at the end of the experience, I felt this unconditional love. That was the most beautiful thing I'd ever felt in my life. So grateful for that experience. So grateful for that experience. And then also that night, my brain was firing. My vocabulary was back. I was thinking fast like I used to. And it just gave me so much hope. Like, okay, I'm going to get well. This is going to be okay. I'm going to get through this and I'm going to be back to normal. Whew, that was a lot. Anyway, so like I said, if anyone out there needs someone to talk to, needs some kind of support, has a question for me, I'm happy to answer. Please reach out and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.